Hey, what's up everyone? This is Claire from Penn Entertainment, and today we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian. So The Mandalorian is the brand new series that's going to be streaming exclusively on Disney+. And that starts next Tuesday, November 12th, Tuesday. We're all very excited for it, and good kudos to Disney Plus for taking every single major watchable franchise, from Star Wars to Marvel to Star Wars to Marvel, taking all of the Disney and Pixar movies and all of that stuff and putting it into a streaming service that, as much as you want to resist buying, will inevitably become just another one of those recurring charges on your account, especially if you have kids. It's just kudos to Disney and Fox for making that completely unavoidable. So The Mandalorian, I'm really excited. It's the first live action Star Wars TV show. Not that the animated series didn't do a good enough job, because trust me, Clone Wars and Rebels, especially Rebels, have been amazing. I'm so glad they're also coming back with Disney Plus. It's just now where I think now that the movies are really starting to wrap up, it was time for the next phase. It was just time. So what I love about The Mandalorian, and what is, I think, extremely interesting to me, is where it sits in the timeline. So they've told us that it's going to be set 5 years after Return of the Jedi, which roughly puts it at about 25 years before The Force Awakens. And that, that 30-ish year stretch, obviously the movies haven't gotten to, but neither have the books, nor the video games, nor the comics, nothing, like animated series, nothing has talked about what's happened in this 30-year stretch. So I think The Mandalorian is going to explain a lot of things in terms of how do we go from Palpatine's dead and the Empire is essentially falling apart, crumbled, ended. How do we go from that, and the Rebels winning, to now there's the First Order, and we've got a new rebellion, a new resistance. We've got, how did that happen? So I think The Mandalorian will kind of explain the transition from, point A to point B. And just to give you a little more context, from episode 1 to episode 6, from the time that young Anakin was plucked from his mother's arms in Naboo to the beginning of The Mandalorian, that's about 40 years. Which means that, chronologically, a lot of characters could show up randomly. A lot of characters that could show up. But I think that I have this feeling that The Mandalorian's actually going to avoid too many cameos. They'll obviously throw in tons of Easter eggs and, things for longtime fans of the franchise to enjoy, but I think they will avoid putting in a ton of major characters. So maybe a lot of minor ones. They also explained to us that The Mandalorian was going to be set in kind of the far reaches of the universe, far away from Empire or Rebellion influence. So really more space cowboy, perfect setting for a bounty hunter like our titular character, the Mandalorian, who as of yet has no name, but is played by Pedro Pascal, who I really hope they don't hide under his helmet the entire time. And Pedro Pascal, obviously most people I think know him from Game of Thrones as Oberyn Martell. I know him from Narcos I loved him in Narcos. He was amazing. I think that he's totally deserving of this role. I'm really excited to see him play this like really cool character. I think another thing, now talking about our main character, our main protagonist, who's been described as, by the actor as an anti-hero, like a true anti-hero. Trying to understand some of his context and where he comes from. Mandalorian history that's really important, I think, for this particular timeline is that right before the Return of the Jedi, there was a Mandalorian civil war. So also for people who don't know who the Mandalorians are, their homeworld is Mandalore, and they're the leader of Mandalorian civilization or society is also called the Mandalore. And that society has traditionally, and the culture has been traditionally very warlike and has sort of flip-flopped. Like, they're not good or bad. They are warlike and work in their own best interests. Therefore, there have been different periods of time where they fought against the Jedi, and then with the Jedi, or with the Empire, and then against the Empire. The Mandalorians had a civil war right before the Return of the Jedi. And this is from the animated series Rebels, so if you want to kind of explore that a little bit, you should definitely watch Rebels. I love the animated series, by the way. They've done such a great job just expanding the universe and getting to the heart of what Star Wars really is. So there was a civil war, which Mandalorian resistance essentially pushed back against the Empire, controlled or influenced Mandalorians, and won. So right before Return of the Jedi, Mandalorians are essentially controlled by the good guys. You've got the new Mandalorian leader, who is voiced by Katie Sackhoff, by the way. I just realized that, from Battlestar Galactica, who's also in a new show. She got the Darksaber that the leader of the Mandalorians have, and is just, and she's tied very closely to the rebels. So they're essentially the good guys, are part of the good guy force right now. So we'll see how that actually plays into the Mandalorian, because depending on where our main character was in terms of the Civil War, what side he was on, could mean a lot of things, right? He could have worked for the Empire for sure. He's a bounty hunter, or none of it at all. Mandalorians are known to kind of wander the galaxy and do what they will, just to, for battle, for continuing their customs, for just making the best of life. Lots of comparisons, obviously, going to be made between the main character, the Mandalorian, and Boba Fett. Mostly because when you see that Mandalorian armor, and every Mandalorian warrior has some form of this armor. Boba Fett was just the most easily recognizable as being Mandalorian, because of the armor, and it wasn't really explained well in the movies. Boba Fett isn't actually that Mandalorian. The most connection that he had to Mandalorians was through his upbringing by Jango Fett. That was the main connection. He wasn't, he was a clone. He wasn't born on Mandalore. He wasn't of Mandalore and immersed in, or had connections really to the Mandalorians besides his father. So, by contrast, the Mandalorian in the show, in this new show, is actually Mandalorian, and I believe the director said he actually is from Mandalore. So, based on that knowledge, I think there will actually be more explained about the Mandalorian Civil War, and whether or not our new character had a place in that. So, I think that this guy is kind of irrelevant. Sorry, not sorry. Even George Lucas was like, I am so surprised why Boba Fett became popular. There was no reason. but he got popular. Think that also based on the trailers, which were just like goosebumps all over. Pretty much every time you hear a John Williams-esque score, you will have flashbacks to every epic movie you've ever seen in your life. And that's just the Pavlovian response, is to just get excited. There's obviously Empire presence wherever this new story is set. The Mandalorian, whoever he's hunting, whatever he's hunting, is shown fighting stormtroopers. I don't know. I think I have the hypothesis that the Empire, or the remnants of the Empire, are trying to find a foothold in the outer reaches, find a way to kind of crawl back and get their revenge, bring down the hammer on, the good guys. And so depending on, I think that there will be hints of that. And I think people are who've been following the series for a long time are curious, are really, really curious as to, again, what I said, the end of Return of the Jedi, how do we get to First Order, and then all of that stuff, the movies. Which will be great, because if enough episodes air in time for the last movie, I think if we have more information from this show, it would be really fun to try to piece that into this new movie. But my main points are, this timeline hasn't been touched before, so The Mandalorian has a lot of room to do, kind of whatever it wants, right? It's untouched. It's a blank slate. I'm pretty sure George Lucas will have a lot to say about it. But there's a lot that they could do for this series. And there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how much or how little the stories and timelines, or the story ties in to the movies, or even the animated series or the books. There's a lot of flexibility there, just based on the fact that they're operating within this gap. Beyond that, I'm excited also to see kind of culturally understand more about Mandalorians. And also Carbonite. They showed Carbonite in the trailer, so there's that. I don't know if that'll be a big deal, or if it is just a throw-in for people who remember that time when Han Solo was trapped. It's a trap. And I don't know, all good things. I'll have a lot more to say after I watch the first episode, so we'll meet back here then and discuss.
Follow our YouTube channel to watch our featured videos and original shows. See you there.